sense that people have now of something impending, and it really shouldn't be such a terrible thing that we're going through and a confusion and so forth, except for the fact that religion has made each of us so frightened of ourselves. But anyhow, one of the things that I wanted to share with you was just a brief review of what we looked at last week on 108 and 109 on the stuff that I gave you. But there was something very interesting, and I think Joan and I heard it in the car. And it was a reporter had asked Mother Teresa, who was that wonderful person, that nun who worked in India. But they asked Mother Teresa, they said, "How do you pray? What do you say to God?" And Mother Teresa said, "I don't say anything. I listen." And then the reporter said, "Well, as you listen, what does God say to you?" And she said, Mother Teresa answered, "He doesn't say anything. He listens." And wow, there was the essence of everything. Such is the nature of true communication. All is still, all is quiet, no one thinks, no one speaks, not a word. All nature simply interacts in the silence. So it was a beautiful statement that sums up exactly what this is all about. Last week we provided to you 108 and 109, which of course dutifully you didn't bring with you. I understand that, because I've always been a revolutionary myself, and whatever the group does, don't do. I know, and that's my teaching. But I just wanted for a moment to just briefly review, because the title of it is Much Ado About Pluto. And the point being that Pluto has crossed Neptune with Charon and has now moving towards its arc upward towards its highest point, which will occur at March 15th, when it becomes the doorway to the next world. This we've gone over and over and over, but it's a significant thing that Pluto, or Hades, the doorway to the next world, will be in its position at that time, which is only, a couple of weeks away. And when we think about these things, suddenly all of the attention starts coming from the radio and television, and now from Space Science News, which you have as 108, 109. But if you look at 108, it says recent discoveries of Pluto-like objects in the outer solar system have sparked debate about the nature of the tiniest planet. Imagine that. After all of these years, suddenly there is debate sparked about the nature of Pluto. And it's a significant thing, because as Albert shared with us a few weeks ago, when Pluto and Charon move, it changes the configuration of the entire electromagnetic web. The entire position universally. You can't move one thing out of place without changing the entire setup of the planetary and structures. I mean, one of the things that I'd like you, when you start trying to grasp this, you talk about Pluto and you talk about Charon and we talk about Aquarius and Pegasus and all of these things. There's a time when even you have to mature beyond that and realize that these things don't exist. I mean, Pegasus is just a name. Pluto is a name. But what is up there are these awesome, spectacular, violent things screaming through the universe and sending off these tremendous energetic electromagnetic rays that are bombarding the Earth and the whole universe. I mean, it is powerful, it is violent, it is awesome. And how do you describe this to people? Other than they've done it, they've given these things little names, and they're cute little names, and Pegasus and a little winged white horse. Well, that thing is anything but a little winged white horse. It is an awesome, it's a powerful, it's a violent thing that is sending off this tremendous energy. And this is what you have to understand. You can wipe, once you start to get the gist of this, wipe these names away and think as to what is being described here. That's why when you consider the violent power that's inherent in this cosmic thing and this change, building a hole in a bomb shelter it's ridiculous. What was told to us many thousands of years ago were of events that were going to occur from these things, the powerful things, and what was going to happen and how it was going to happen by people who had been hit by this light before us and were able to tell us from experience. And the idea, the concept was that for each human mind, it is absolutely essential that you begin to flow into a harmony with this light and not be outside of it. But anyhow, in the very first paragraph of this 108, it says that the solar system became a bit mixed up in 1979 when Pluto moved closer to the sun than Neptune. But then the situation rectified itself on February 11th. Now today's February the 28th, only 17 days ago, when Pluto crossed Neptune's orbit. Well, when Pluto crosses Neptune's orbit, Charon has to go along with it. And of course, the story then is of Charon taking you across the river Styx. Well, that doesn't make, a lot of sense other than mythological terms. But when you see Charon crossing Neptune, you find, indeed, Charon crosses the water, because Neptune is the water. Neptune is the sea. And so, indeed, it has happened. Then, considering the closeness, if you look at the third paragraph, it says, is Pluto really a planet? You see? The last sentence says about Pluto and Charon, some astronomers consider the pair to be a double planet, but they are so close. And of course, that's basically what the myth has found, that they are so close. Notice in paragraph 5, if you count down there, it says, all the other rocky planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, are located in the inner solar system close to the sun, except for Pluto. Pluto is a rocky planet that's located outside. So you see that Pluto is where it is for a purpose. It is totally different in all respects. It's like Uranus. It spins in a direction opposite of all the other planets. It's a rocky planet that should be in here, but it's out there. So, but its purpose is being served. If you look on the back of page 108, you'll see that in 1992, two guys, David Jewett and J. Liu, discovered a curious object called QB1. And that was the first hint that there might be more than just Pluto out there. And we have to look carefully at that. We have to look at the suggestions in the myths as to what was accompanying Pluto. And I'll tell you what was accompanying Pluto. There was a group that accompanied Pluto, and they were called the Furies. And their very name tells you that they're not fun to be around. They weren't a nice bunch of people. But these Furies, then, what kind of impact may or might they have? Here comes the football player. Yeah. Hey. Give him a round of applause. He said people on television saying he's talking about the Furies, and then he says, here comes the football player. And he did. What was the last team you played for? It wasn't the Furies. What was it?
No, it wasn't the Furies. It was the Madison Mad Dogs.
The Madison Mad Dogs. What, Madison where? Madison, Wisconsin. I'll do that later. I got to get that. All right, it was good to see you. Good to see you. Well, you should be. After all, it's terrible. I keep telling everybody, no, don't be sorry. I keep telling it's not a cult. People come in here whenever they want, and they leave whenever they want. So that's perfectly okay. Okay. In paragraph 3 on the back page, it says nearly 100 objects like QB1 have been found. And this swarm of Pluto-like objects beyond Neptune is known as the Kuiper belt. So in other words, it's not just Pluto out there. There's a swarm of this thing out there. A swarm of Pluto-like objects beyond Neptune. And paragraph 5 says that though Pluto is practically indistinguishable, the main difference is Pluto's reflectivity, which is much higher. It is bright. It is extremely bright. Paragraph 6 on the back of page 108 is interesting. Pluto has enough mass and gravity to retain a tenuous atmosphere from which bright surface frosts may be deposited. It certainly is a dark, cold place, as is Pluto or Hades in the myth. So basically what we found then, as we look through all of this stuff and go on into 109, which you can read, I don't want to go over it again. But what we have found to match it with the myth is that Pluto is in perpetual darkness. It is the farthest thing from the sun. Pluto and Charon cross each other. And this would be the boat of Charon crossing the Styx and passing by the house of Hades. You know what I want to look at too? And Albert, I didn't notice this before, but connecting this with consciousness, with the mind, with the brain, with the head. The three-headed dog that guards the house of Hades, stands in front of the house of Hades. His name is very close to cerebrum. And so I want to look at that and just see, because this root here, its name is Cerebrus, is the dog's name. And the root cera means to cover. That's what the cerebrum is, it's the covering. And that's why cherubim and cerebrum and all of this kind of it. What berus means, I don't know, we'll have to find out. But looking at that word and then looking at the cerebrum, I just found a curious thing there. Some of Pluto's atmosphere interacts with Charon. And Pluto's orbit is contrary to the other orbits, as is Uranus. And then, of course, the interesting part that they're planning a NASA mission to Pluto, and it's going to be called the Pluto Express. So we have very interesting scientific evidence about Pluto and Charon, and realizing that now Pluto and Charon have left the dock. Charon's boat has crossed the river of Neptune, and then we are now about to rendezvous on March 15th with Pluto taking its position as the doorway to the next world. And there, too, in the front lawn, we will see the barking three-headed dog, Cerebrus, which, we'll tell you more about that. But just how does then this story unfold as we look at Pluto in the sky? Pluto is dark and cold. It is perpetual darkness. And in the myth, Hades won dominion over the underworld, came to prefer darkness. In fact, Hades or Pluto would prefer to be by itself. Hades or Pluto is a loner, doesn't want anybody around. Pluto remained out of touch with Olympus and all of the other gods. He seldom met with other gods, seldom left the underworld. He was a loner, alone and separated. With Charon, he stood all by himself. He guards the doorway to the next world. Pluto is the most private of all gods. He doesn't welcome visitors. He rarely lets anyone who enters this place leave. Cerberus, the three-headed watchdog, makes sure that those who pass through stay there. Yet Pluto wasn't vicious and he wasn't evil, but he didn't do any of the dirty work. Any of the punishments carried out in the darkness of that cold region were carried out by the Furies. And Hades or Pluto had another name that few people spoke, and it was this Aidoneus. And that means the unseen one. And no one would speak it because no one would want to attract his attention. But now he has turned his head and he's looking directly at you, glaring down. The Furies, or the chaos and the confusion, are about to exact their toll, because the orders from Zeus, or God, is that there has to be change upon the earth. And so Pluto turned his head and is staring at you. We know of Persephone. He wasn't alone. Persephone, well, she was a beautiful young girl. She was picking flowers, and there was butterflies, and there was little water brooks and everything. It couldn't have been more gentle. But when Pluto dragged her down to the underworld, she became a dreaded figure. She was the most dreaded, most feared person in the world. Her name was only invoked in curses. Because when she was in the lower underworld, she was feared. Well, so are you. You know, when you're up picking flowers, that means things are going good. But when you're not, when you're down in the lower parts of yourself, people just as soon stay away from you. Me too. But rather than jump around, I wanted to give you an idea, because, you know, I'm going to introduce you to some very strange things very, very shortly. I wanted to give you an idea, like, about the celestial movements and the things that are about to come. Where did all this come from, you know, and in what order? I mean, how did this happen? You know, how can we, you know, perceive? how do the myths explain what we know now to be the forces of the universe? And we're not talking about people here. We're not talking about cartoon characters like Disney. We're talking about power. We're talking about energy. We're talking about life-controlling and life-changing forces that are going to impact on you and the entire world. And every living, breathing thing is going to come over and come under the direction and the energy of this stuff. Where did this come from? How does Pluto and this little snaggly-toothed gray boatman fit into our lives all of a sudden? The beginning of all things out of the Greek myths was a mystery, and that's what Pluto and Charon signify, a mystery. These quiet, dark ones who are hidden from the sight of any of us in the cold, dark reaches someplace, and now all of a sudden we hear that for whatever reason, for the last 250 years the boat has been quiet. It hasn't moved from the dock. Pluto and Hades have been very quiet, but all of a sudden, a couple of weeks ago, they left and moved to a different location. And now they have a rendezvous in 2 weeks at another point. And the rendezvous which they have in 2 weeks will be at that point, which is the doorway to a whole new world. And that's what signifies out of the dark and barren comes something that is new. That's why Jesus is born of a virgin. That's why in the Bible, every child of promise, whether it be Jacob, whether it be Abraham, whether it be Samson, whether it be all of these people were born of a woman who was either a virgin or of a barren womb, because out of this barrenness comes this new life, new creation. According to the ancients, the physical world was not born from nothing. The physical world sprang from something that you know very well. Chaos. Out of chaos came creation. Out of chaos comes creation. Chaos was born out of the darkness. Chaos appeared out of the darkness in the same way that it happens inside of us when we just encounter the dark time of our soul and we have to be away and we have to be separated and we can't be hardly near anybody, and if something doesn't go in the right direction, but if it goes in the wrong direction, out of this darkness comes chaos, what can result in terrible things. And you read in the paper of violent things. Generally, first, before the violence starts, it broods its way and just starts to grow like a moss somewhere inside of us, and then suddenly it explodes in this violence, and this is where this came from. Chaos came out of this darkness. No one witnessed the birth of chaos, and that's why no one will really witness what comes out of Pluto and Charon, though we know they are there. They will happen to us. In chaos, everything was confusion. And what you're seeing now and what you're being foretold, you can't turn on the television or the radio without them talking about the chaos and the confusion that they're afraid is going to come upon the earth. I mean, New Age people, I stay away from them. I'll be quite frank with you. I totally stay away from them because all they talk about is chaos, even when there is none. I don't get involved in it. I mean, with all due respect, and everybody's got a right to express themselves, I can't listen to people anymore that can't document what they're talking about. But what I'm talking about is not coming from New Age people or fundamentalists. What I'm talking about is coming from scientific people who are very, very concerned about this thing that we've created. We've created a monster. And nobody ever stopped to figure out what is the monster going to do when it no longer knows where it is or what time it is. And so that in chaos, according to the ancients, the atoms were constantly warring with each other. Heat fought with cold, liquid fought with solid, wet fought with dry, dark fought with light, up and down. Every quality clashed with its opposite. And in the midst of all of this chaos, as all of this violence, tremendous, awesome violence was just screaming across the universe, out of that chaos came Gaia. Not born, just came. The earth. And the earth Gaia provided a solid footing for the gods, but the earth provided something more that you, each one of you, have experienced. The earth provided a place for light beings to suit up with material bodies so they could interact in the physical realm. That's exactly what you've done here. You've suited up with a physical body. And though chaos and Gaia gave birth, Earth and universe, the real forces behind creation were not chaos and Gaia. The real force behind creation was Eros. Everything came onto the scene only after a very powerful erotic attraction. Call it what you will. Everything emerged as products of procreation. Everything evolved from sex. Everything. And chaos had a child whose name was Erebus. And the word Erebus means darkness. Darkness. And another child was born to chaos, and that child was Nyx, which is night. And so then darkness and night were of chaos, the children of chaos. All forces of negativity and darkness sprang from chaos. And then one night Gaia went to sleep, and when she woke up there was a baby next to her. She had not intercourse, but there was a baby. And the baby born to her was Uranus. And the word Uranus in Greek means heaven. And Uranus is the controlling planet of this particular age of Pluto and Chiron and of supernova and of Aquarius and all. Uranus is the controller. And that's why in the Bible when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, if you read it in the original Greek, it says the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. And it sure is. And Uranus spins in a different way than all of the other planets. And as all of the other planets send down electromagnetism like this, Uranus sends it down like this. And then you wonder, why do I feel the way I do? Why do I feel crazy? Why is everything going nuts? What's wrong? What happened to the traditional family? Why don't they pay attention? And they will know what happened to it. One of the first casualties of the evil that they perpetrated on the earth was destroyed. The good old traditional family, because suddenly the being said that they did not feel that women should be considered lesser than men. They did not feel that women should have to submit to men. And so the traditional family dissolved in the way that we've understood it. Well, anyhow, love or eros began to become involved. Uranus, the sky was so filled with love for his mother Gaia that he showered her with warm rain. And Gaia gave of herself, and from her came bodies of waters and flowers and trees and plants. And then Nyx, the night, mated with Erebus, the darkness, and they produced a daughter, Hemera. And Hemera, their daughter that was produced was Day. And they produced a son by the name of Ether. Pretty soon. In fact, I can tell you something that's strange that happened to me. Joan will tell you this is the truth. There was a little rabbit in our driveway. And this was a, you know I'm strange anyhow, this was a talking rabbit, and I was talking to it. And the rabbit was crying, and I said, "Little rabbit, what's the matter?" He said, "I have a toothache." I says, "A rabbit with a toothache? This is terrible. Why don't you go to a dentist?" "I'm afraid." "Nothing to be afraid of." "Why?" "The dentist will give you, he'll pull the tooth. He'll give you gas." The rabbit says, "I can't take gas." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because I'm an ether bunny. This really happened. It really happened. Well, anyhow, the rabbit must have recovered, because it was that 2 days later, I guess, you opened the refrigerator and there he was sitting in the refrigerator. Do you remember that? Joan says to him, remember you said, "What are you doing in here? What are you doing in the refrigerator?" And the rabbit said, "Isn't this a Westinghouse?" And he said, and Joan says, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm just Westing." Well, anyhow, these things really happen. Okay, so anyhow, when Erebus, the darkness, mated with Nyx, the night, and they had 2 children, Day and Ether, Night, the mother, and Day, the daughter, shared the same house. It was a house shrouded in darkness by grim clouds, but they never went into the house together. They would take turns, and Day would wait. And when darkness would leave, then Day would pick up and move into the house. And when darkness would come for her turn, she would wait outside, and then Day would leave, and darkness would enter into the house. And Night gave birth to these following children, and I'm sure many of you know of them. There was Moros, doom; Thanatos, death; Hypnos, sleep; Nemesis, retribution; Eris, strife; Keres, those who carried off the bodies of the dead; and Morai, the fates. And Eris, who is strife, gave birth to famine, sorrows, lies, and murder. You see what's being told you here? This is master psychology. You know, what is born out of us from the different concepts of our life in the darkness or in the night or in the day, and all of these things come together. So now we see out of chaos the origin of consciousness. That's what this is. Talking about famine and sorrows and lies and doom and all of these things, the origin of consciousness, the things that we give birth to out of ourselves, Erebus and nighttime of the soul, the things we live through in ourselves, doom and fear and death and retribution and our feelings of hate, and all of these things are born out of chaos as people of the earth, not as people of the light. All of this has always been part of your life. You've experienced all of these things. And it's always part of the celestial bodies we call planets and constellations, and it always has been. But how can I bring you back to an understanding of why you were assigned to the planet Earth? How can I get you to understand why you were sent to the planet Earth? You are here to complete a mission. This is a way station between the mother place or the place of the White Lodge and the new fields where new life will be expanded. This station is your dwelling place because you were assigned here. I said last night, and Joan corrected me, she was concerned because I told the people there who are not maybe as advanced as you are that I am a recruiter.
Wow.
And I am here to recruit
What
you.
else did you say?
I don't know.
Lord,
What else did I say?
what was for the, not the Mormons, it was for
No, I simply said like the, you know, the, what do they call them, Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever. But I said, I am a recruiter for a different group who want you to be part of this. But the difference is my recruitment does not require you to join. I don't want to know your name, your phone number, where you go, where you come from, anything like that. My recruiting of you only asks you to be part of this. If you wish to, and I've told you how to, and I will tell you again and again to be part of this. How can I get you to understand and move in this time of mind evolution to a point where you begin to reunite with your higher family? I will tell you this. Each one of you, when you are done here, and if you are assigned back to the mother place, which is 4555, have a body, have your original body waiting for you, and you will enter back into it. Now, you know, that's the beginning, but there's a lot more for me to say, because I have to figure to you, and that's why I want you to have this copy of the Philadelphia Inquirer to tell you exactly how this works. But what are you expecting? What are you expecting to happen? Al's telling me that people are building bomb shelters. There's Pluto, there's Chiron, there's Pegasus, there's supernova, there's your brain. The brain. Your brain is heating up in expectation of what's going to happen in this great electronic thing that's going to be the cosmic light. All of these things are worrying, but for what? What is going to happen, and what do you expect is going to happen? People come to me and say the planets are going to line up, or the planets are going to form a cross. So what? What do you expect is going to happen as a result of that? They're going to line up Thursday and Friday. They're not going to be lined up. So what? Say. We've analyzed all of these celestial things, but in reality, as I said, there is no Pluto. There is no supernova. All of these things are violent, screaming, tremendously powerful things that cause life to change wherever life comes in contact with it. And it's changing. The change can be astronomically tremendous. And you have to be a part of it. Screaming throughout the universe in a giant cacophony of light and sound, powerful, violent, tremendously big things positioning themselves. And when they position themselves in a different position, something wild happens. Something different happens. And the people that you've grown to know, who have written thousands of years ago, told you what to do. If I die before I die, then when I die, I will die. They told you what to do, how to start forming into a harmony. You cannot be part of the chaos. You've got to be part of the harmonic with this thing. Electronically powerful, destructive, awesome things screaming through the universe, and suddenly one of these things has turned its attention to you, a little gray grinning man of death named Chiron. Looking at you. Right now. He was still and quiet and peaceful for 250 years, but last week he moved his boat. He moved. So what's going to happen? Are rays of light going to impact your brain so you know what lottery numbers to play? Are rays of light going to impact your brain so you can get a new job or a new girlfriend or boyfriend? Are we expecting that this power will come down and sweep us into some dark hole and deposit us on another planet of streets of gold? And just building me a mansion next door to Jesus? Is that what we expect? I used to believe that. I honestly did. They think I'm bizarre, but I mean, they were telling me you're going to have a mansion next door to Jesus. Everybody else was going to be down the street. I was going to be next door. Oh, my God. The violence of these magnetic thrusts is bursting through the universe, is pouring down on the earth. Beings of light are flowing downward, and some have arrived. And they bring light to awaken us. And they need your help desperately, because when this starts to happen, there must be people who know. There must be people who can take the hands of other people and show them how to get into the harmony of this and to get out of the chaos. The Bible says to you, in the Bible, the Word of God says to you that God is light. How do you pray to light? I mean, do you want to kneel before this bulb and tell it something? How do you do that? You do that the way Mother Teresa said to do it. You don't say anything, and the light doesn't say anything, but the two of you intercourse together. You are not a member of the family of the earth. Your mother and father had sex. A body was formed. You entered into it. You nested into it, and here you are. But that is not your mother. That is not your father. You are children of the light. Your family is light. Gates within your brain must be open so that you begin to think on a higher plane. Chakras or seals will explode as they open. You will be linked with the cosmic tree of life. And everything that I have ever told you in the 14 or 15 years that I've been doing this stuff, you know doggone well every bit of it has been proven, and every bit of it has either shown up on a newspaper or a television somewhere 2 days after I said it. And what I'm telling you is true. Or I wouldn't say it. I can't prove everything, because sometimes I take you a little, remember that TV show One Step Beyond? Sometimes I take you to places where other people don't know what you know. But if you can show me where anything I've ever spoken to you has not manifested itself in the news in one way or another, fine, tell me it, but you're not going to be able to. And when we mention Pluto, 2 days later, it's all over the place. When we mention 45-55, and President Clinton has a trial, and the resulting vote is plastered on every newspaper headline in the world, and what's the number of the vote? 45-55. Coming upon this earth is the confusion of Y2K, but what follows is much greater, much more powerful. And I am here to prepare you to go through the fury and to find your peace and place in this universe and upon this earth. The young angel of light that is coming to the home of Vinny and Cindy is a special, special person coming at a special, special time. A special time. Only able to come to people who are aware and enlightened. The one that has nested inside of Cindy would not come to the people down the street, because it must be nurtured by people who know, who understand. It must have a Joseph and Mary type to nurture it. It must be of a higher level. That's why that angel of light has nested there. It has a job to do. And it will bring things as an infant. It will say things as a child, and people will listen. So the gates of light are beginning to swing open, and I encourage you to make sure that your green light is at your house and lit in the nighttime hours. Is it? What does it cost? 30 cents for a bulb?
No.
What is it? $1? The true teachings have been encoded into a language of light which is only available. Listen to me, and I won't keep you that much longer. But the true teachings have been encoded into a language of light which is only available through the third eye. Only there can you pick it up. That's why your meditation is so important. The Brotherhood of Light, or the Light Lodge in Samael, will be turning to the earth at this time of initiation of life into new forms of both physical and light. You've been given wisdom. I mean, you know that. I mean, you're walking around with all this stuff under your arm, and not one bit of this is New Age stuff or religious stuff. Every bit of this is either from newspapers or medical dictionaries or encyclopedias or the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. That's the documentation you have in your hand from this place. And you say, well, who told you this? You can go to credible scientists who spoke these things, not people who channeled something. You go to people who are basing this on the science of the universe. And then who did we follow before that? The very people who provided the Western culture, which is its foundation of science and mathematics and philosophy, those that you call the classical Greeks, the Platos and the Pythagoras's of the world, who knew the things that I'm talking about here very clearly. The Brotherhood of the Great White Lodge. You don't concern yourselves about the word brotherhood, because in light there is no sex. They're simply defining words that were used since the beginning. There's a Brotherhood of Michael. There's a Brotherhood of Enoch. There's a Brotherhood of Melchizedek. And they direct 70 others. There is a command center where course corrections are calculated and implemented, and every one of you, every single one of you, has a frequency, and there is a celebration every time one of you pulls yourself to the center and they read your frequency, because they can't read it otherwise. It is up to you to pull the light to the center. When you pull the light to the center, they read the frequency, and they throw up a cheer just like you see in the command center at NASA when something good happens. Woo! Guess who I heard from? She's on the beam. What are you talking about? Look at, who is that? God's Gloria. We picked her up. That's exciting to them. You are loved. And they'd spend their hours looking for you. But you can either send the frequency or you can hide it. And the existence of these is for one purpose, and that is to restore you out of your sleep so that you may begin, as the universal repair is carried out, the correction of the fault. There are quantum changes coming down upon the planet, raining down upon the universe that will affect every level of intelligence. Even the very sciences that we read will make a quantum leap forward into new consciousness of light. And my God, I mean, what do you want? There's a lady, a beautiful lady, physicist in Denmark, who just slowed the speed of light down from 186,400 miles a second to 38 miles an hour. What do you want? You know what it proves? It proves that everything you learned was nothing. It was wrong. You spend all that money sending kids to school and sending kids to college, and everything is wrong. Not because we deliberately, not because we didn't teach what we knew, but what we knew was not what is. And these are the things that we find as suddenly we start to become enlightened. What do you mean? Well, you know what it means to me? I often wondered, I know the light leaves the body, but my God, at 186,000 miles a second, you can't even sneeze and it's going to be past the moon somewhere. How is this possible? Now we find out when you get out of that body, you could walk over to the other place. And the body's dead, and I'm going to sit down here, I'm going to make a left turn at the kitchen, and I'm going to sit here and wait, and everybody's going to come in the house and say, I feel the presence of Uncle John here. And Uncle John's sitting there. Yeah, you do. Woo! Yeah, Uncle John. Where is Uncle John? He's sitting right on the floor. Woo! Because if light can go 38 miles an hour, light can stop. I didn't say that. I didn't make that up. This was all over the television, all over the world. This was proved in a scientific laboratory by this woman physicist in Denmark. And how did she slow it down? Put it through some atoms that were like molasses. Uncle John sitting there. Woo. So anyhow, quickly, that is why you and I have followed teleportation. You know, we followed that for a long time. Light being teleported. The quantum leap is even being made as Pluto and Neptune cross the river to take up their positions. And you're expected to awaken to take up your position. If Pluto and Chiron have moved, how about you? How about you moving? I don't mean move, physically move, but inside of yourself, take up your position. Cross the river inside of yourself. Move out of the orbit that you've been held into for all of these years and assume a new orbit as the doorway to the next world. What goes on out there is supposed to go on in here. You're living in 3 dimensions. I understand that. But some of you very shortly are going to be transmitted into a 4th dimension that's going to take you beyond the conventional things. And you're going to stand in awe of a much larger universe teeming with life. Life is all around you. You simply don't know it's out there because it flows at a higher frequency. But the ceiling on that frequency for some of you is about to be lifted. So you've begun to understand the scripture in a new way. The words are coded. They were placed there by the Brotherhood of Light. I don't know how many of you have ever read the Coptic Gospel. You know, the word Coptic is a Greek word that means Egypt. But have you ever read the Coptic Gospel of Thomas? In that Coptic Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says this. He gives you instructions. If they ask, where do you come from? Tell them, we have come from the light. And if they say, who are you? You say, we are sons and daughters of the light. Even though many of you may not have ascended as high as was intended, I can guarantee you that soon you will be able to commingle with the higher ones. And it's fun. And it's exciting. And it will be a tremendous experience with you working in the higher light while being part of the physical earth reality. I will then continue this. What I wanted to do quickly, because we're going to get into some very deep things and very strange things, okay? And but I wanted you to kind of relax a little bit and as we approach these things. And I want to give you this information from the Philadelphia Inquirer. If you would just bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'll hand these out. And maybe you need can get a little help handing them out so that we can move a little quicker. When sometimes we have a chance, you know, I've never spoken to you about that, but they are sending very advanced little angels of light down, and it's going to be a special one. Okay. And of course, that does put a degree of responsibility on you guys to continue to nurture him in this beautiful way that you're both aware of. Is, John, could you just get out of the way of the camera? That's a boy. All right. If you guys got to go, if you're uncomfortable, why don't you? Are you all right? Okay, good. Okay, this is what I want to do with you, okay? Would you do this? Let me start this, and I'd like the people on TV to hear this. This was an experiment, scientific experiment carried out by Andrew Newberg and Eugene D'Aquili I think it was in University of Pennsylvania Hospital, whatever. But in the very first page, it says here that in his poem about enlightenment, the Zen poet speaks of the singing image of fire, and the Christian mystic writes of the pure nothing concealed. Now brain research suggests such beatific visions, I want you to underline that word, visions, can be described neurologically in terms of eruptive, you turn the page over, eruptive overflows, reverberating circuits, and blood flows and blockages involving the prefrontal cortex and various lobes of the brain. Eugene D'Aquili, I'm going to skip some words, but follow me, professor of psychiatry, University of Pennsylvania, and Andrew Newberg, fellow at the hospital's nuclear medicine, scan brains, not verses. In a talk, Newberg described how their 2-year study of the brains of people engaged in Buddhist meditation provides mounting evidence that sensations of calm, unity, very important word, and transcendence, extremely important, correspond to increased activity in the brain's frontal lobes behind the forehead, very important, and decreased activity in the parietal lobes at the top rear of the head. We can't say we can see God, said with a laugh. What we can say is when somebody has religious experiences, they call them religious experiences, remember these are scientists, this is what it's doing to them. Research associate since '93, but why God, by that he means an intuition, see where it says why God won't go away, by that he means an intuition of transcendent reality. Now listen to this and just let this sink into your head as to what I'm telling you and the strange things that I've started telling you today, okay? Let's read that. Let me read that whole paragraph. Newberg D'Aquili's Research Associates since 1993 titled his Tuesday talk, Why God Won't Go Away. By that, he means an intuition of transcendent reality may be hardwired into the human mind. Now, do you see that? In other words, something was placed inside of your head for this very purpose. It's all set. The wiring is in place. Everything is ready. All you have to do is find out and begin to use it. Okay? The idea is that the brain is set up in ways to help us survive. This is extremely important when you get into these times of chaos and confusion. Religion offers the reassurance there is purpose and causal effect in this scary world. Thus, religious and spiritual experiences are right in line with what the brain is trying to do for us by helping us to function and make sense of life here on the third rock from the sun. D'Aquili is a veteran anthropologist, a religion and clinical therapist, and they specialize in using radioactive dyes. We'll go into that. The team has measured brain function and cerebral blood flow during Tibetan Buddhist meditation in 8 subjects, and something like Bryn Mawr and graduate, blah, blah, blah. Particulars of their meditation scan study will be published, but Newberg said last week that the research supports their earlier work in the neurology of unitary mental states induced by religious ritual and meditation. They propose that the brain's amygdala, ring a bell? If it doesn't, get your stuff out, look on page 2A. The amygdala is at the top of the spine near the brain. The word amygdala means almond, A-L-M-O-N-D. In the mercy seat of the temple was Aaron's rod, which is the spine, which budded almonds. It's the amygdala, Okay, very, very, very important, and you can find that on page 2A of the stuff that I gave you, scientifically. Where the heck was I?
They possess the brain.
Okay, they propose the brain's amygdala, which translates sensory impressions into emotions, generates a sense of religious awe attached to behaviorally marked ritual gestures such as bows or sign of the cross and so on. This, they say, builds on research tying hallucinations, out-of-body sensations, and déjà vu activity or suppression of activity in parts of the brain. What intrigues them is how religious rituals and practices stimulate the two major subsystems of the autonomic systems. One of these subsystems, the ergotropic, is the body's fight or flight nervous system. In moments of stress, it raises the heart rate, etc. The other system, the tropat, whatever that can be understood as the system of calm. It decreases the heart rate, slows respiration, regulates cell growth, digestion, relaxation, and sleep. De Kelly and Newberg proposed that certain practices, religious practices, can so stimulate the body's calm system or flight system that activity in the related brain circuit starts to reverberate while simultaneously shutting down ever more of the other system. Isn't that interesting? It activates that God part and shuts down the you part. That's what basically we're talking about. Depending on whether the ritual is fast, as in the spinning dances of Sufi whirling dervishes, or slow, as in Zen meditation, different parts of the brain are activated, perceived by the mind as a higher state of consciousness. In states of very high activity, there can be a spillover such, now listen to this, that the dormant system activates and goes online. Whoa, did you just hear what that said? It said here the dormant is the right side, the God side, the spirit side. The dormant system activates and goes online. And when you go online, the voice says, you got mail. If you're not an AOL, that'll go over your head, but that's what happened. Okay. Now, you see what's important about for you to see this? That when I'm telling you this stuff, these guys don't have any axe to grind one way or the other. They're just finding out that meditation really does some wing-ding stuff here. And not only that, it wakes up the dormant part, which is the sleeping part, and you go online in the World Wide Web. And there's a worldwide electronic web up there, and inside of your head there's something called arachnoid, which is the web, and it covers the whole thing. Wow. Although rare, this dual state of oceanic bliss or absorption into the object of contemplation. I'm in the last line. And in extreme cases, the last column, there can occur a maximal discharge of both systems, inducing brain activities perceived by the mind as the absolute unity of being, which they describe as the abolition of any discrete boundaries between beings. There will be no boundaries. Did you see what that just said? There will be no boundary between you and light beings. It will be abolished, okay? And by the elimination of the self-other dichotomy. They even propose that a mystic in that state will experience either a divine being such as God or the cosmic void of nirvana, depending on whether there has been a predominantly ergotropic or whatever tropohopic involved. So are the great mystic illuminations exalted throughout the ages, authentic glimpses into true being and ultimate reality. Okay? Or are the revelations nothing more than the brain's perceiving its own activity? De Kelly and Newberg said there's no way of knowing for sure, but they insist in all their published papers that it would be foolish to suppose that religious awe, numinous visions, or mystical experience is reducible to neurochemical flux. What's really real is a big issue. He said they hope to address some of these weighty problems, tentatively titled to be published later this year by Fortress. While their data can be interpreted to mean that certain mental states are the result of a specific brain activity, that assignment of causality can be flipped entirely. It is not plausible that the changes in brain function are the result, not cause, of changes in consciousness. And lastly, down to the last, almost, and because mystics throughout history have been so emphatic that the reality they perceived in their illuminated state was primary, that is, more real than ordinary earthly existence, we have to be careful what we claim. Western science says matter is primary. But if you flip it around and look at what the mystics report, you could say that it's ultimately consciousness and awareness that are primary. And so perhaps science will someday discover what Emily Dixon asserted more than a century ago, and I cut off the bottom. I thought, I don't know what the heck she said, but I don't know what she said. She said, Billy's right. Okay, is it